we're going to talk about resident councils and a little bit about family councils. A lot of what we talk about with resident councils also applies to family councils, but certainly not all. And as I was doing some research to prepare for today, I found some pretty good stuff online that is helpful and clear. I like clear. So, what was the movie where they said, tell it to me like I'm a 4-year-old. Yeah, tell it to me like I'm a 4-year-old. So resident councils, why and how? Well, today we're going to talk about the need for resident and family councils. We're going to know the history of resident self-government, and the councils are a form of resident self-government. We're going to understand the policies and procedures surrounding resident family councils in Ohio, and be prepared to assist in developing effective councils and to work with operating councils. We'll see as we go through our conversation this morning that it can be tricky to assist without stepping in and assuming leadership of the councils. We'll talk and we'll repeat and we'll remind ourselves that the resident councils are for residents and they're not for staff and they're not for the owner and they're not even for us. We can assist, but they don't belong to us, they belong to the residents. So what are some common complaints? The most common complaints, I should have asked you before I showed this slide what you think the most common complaints are. But slow response times, poor quality food, and social isolation. And there's a longer list as well. Boredom, disregarding preferences, not having say in the care plan. Some facilities have tried to restrict visiting hours, which they can't do. Disruptions in sleep. I was hospitalized not too long ago, and one of the things that blew my mind in the hospital, and I should have known this, is you just can't sleep. And I wonder how often that is also the case in our long-term care facilities. Improper use of restraints, medications, and feeding tubes is another one. And again, that staffing issues and slow response times, complications with Medicaid, and that really comes down to payment and so on, and eviction issues. Those last two can be tied together very closely because eviction issues are very often for non-payment, and non-payment is sometimes, often, a complication with Medicaid, getting Medicaid going and so on. So are we all hearing and seeing okay?
Yep.
Okay, we got a yep. Okay, I'll go with a yep. So what are resident and family councils? Well, pretty simple, a group of residents or family members who meet regularly. And I think that is a key, is they meet regularly, usually monthly, but that can vary. They discuss and offer suggestions regarding policies and procedures and support one another and plan activities and participate in educational activities. In other words, there can be a program. For example, in the fall, we often sometimes take a program in to teach and review resident rights because October is Resident Rights Month. So that would be an example of an educational activity. But they meet regularly, and there are some other regulations that we'll look at as we go. There are benefits to residents. It builds independence and opportunities for personal growth. It feels very different to be upset about a concern or having problems with something and being helpless and having a place to go to be able to talk about it and problem solve about it. And that's a major benefit from the resident council is the residents don't have to just suffer or be miserable or complain about it. They have an avenue to which to go, so they can address the problem directly and positively, and so on. There's a support system, strength in numbers. You've seen this so often, I'm sure, in different work experiences and so on, is when there's a problem to be solved, when you put heads together to come up with ideas for solving the problems, or when a number of people speak with one voice, you are much more likely to get results. And something that I did not address with this PowerPoint, but I want to pause and address it right now, is sometimes when you talk with residents in facilities and you'll say, do you attend your resident council? Do you have a resident council? Do you attend resident council meetings? And sometimes they'll say, no, I don't go to that because nothing ever gets done. We just talk about the same problems over and over again and nothing ever gets fixed. That is a non-effective resident council. And if we follow all of the steps, really there isn't any reason that problems shouldn't get fixed. And we will be going through those solution steps and so on. So another benefit to residents is early identification of problems for easier solutions. So some staff member or multiple staff members are parking equipment in hallways, and the hallways are narrowing because there's so much equipment that's being left in hallways. The staff member will say that they don't have time to take them and put them away properly. If that problem is identified early and solved early, then hopefully we can prevent accidents, someone falling over equipment and so on. And there is a correlation, it's a clear correlation that effective councils lead to quality of care. And there are benefits to providers, although some providers are not big fans of resident councils. The residents from the residents councils notice problems, insist on fixing problems. That can be inconvenient for a provider, but many of our providers care about the excellent treatment of residents. And so for them, they're going to appreciate the two-way communication. Without the resident council, staff, administrators and social workers and so on can talk to individual people, but it's individual residents, but it's very hard to tell how widespread the issue is when you're doing it, talking to people one-on-one. And so the resident council creates that two-way communication opportunity. It informs the facility of problems before they escalate. So again, identify the problems when they're small. And it allows the facility to learn from residents and improve the quality of care. Do you think that providers are able to learn from residents?
They can,
Yeah.
but I wonder how many of them do. You know, I work for a less than ideal facility, and we're having problems with them even accepting the forms that the problems are on, no less solving them. And all they put on it is working on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I would agree. I
Interesting
think they could be
situation.
very helpful to the administration, but acting on the suggestions and listening and doing something about it seems to be a problem.
Right. So you don't see the positive effect coming back. Is that right?
Right. That's Jamie. I agree.
Correct.
I don't, my facility, I'm one of the problem children also. And I don't think they really pay attention or care, just sort of because they have to have one.
Okay.
They barely listen to anything I ask or talk about. So why would they listen to residents who are older and, you know, maybe not all entirely as sharp as some of others?
Mm-hmm.
I'm at one of the better facilities, Twin Towers, and the resident council meetings that I went to were both in the assisted living wing and very interactive with the staff. There was a new person as director of that unit, and he seemed very interested in knowing what to do. And some things did change, but I haven't been able to get back for several months trying to find out when they're scheduled again. So,
Well, we have to
Well,
be
yeah, and
invited
that's part
to
of the
one of their.
problems. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, that's part of the problem that I've encountered with the same resident council case talking about, that I haven't been able to even get information from the administrator of assisted living to find out where they are now, because it's a new administrator, not even that new, but communication around access is also an issue.
Blair, do you mean you're having trouble getting information about the resident council, like when and where?
Yes, yes, and I've actually talked to the staff ombudsman about it, and she gave me a couple of hints, but it's sort of a detective enterprise.
Do they give you the name of the resident council president?
Oh no, they can't even tell me. I can't even get in touch with the administrator there, Mike Fridley. So
okay.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
But that's just an example.
Yeah.
I have a second home that is actually, it's a more troublesome facility, but the resident council is really good there. So, you know, doesn't always correspond.
Yeah, yeah. I think that resident councils are kind of all over the place. And if we did a survey, a 6-question survey of all of our facilities, our nursing homes, and asked about their resident councils and who the presidents are and how many times they met last year and so on, we would get everything across the board. Don't you think?
Oh, definitely.
So, Ohio statutory requirements. There we go. Ohio statutory requirements center around the Resident Bill of Rights that came out in 1976, and then the Ohio Revised Code, duties of nursing home administrators. I want to show you something. I almost need help carrying them. We have these resources, and these, we have 3 of them. 2 of them apply to nursing homes, and then 1 to assisted living. And they contain what are called F tags, and F tags are used by the surveyors, by the state when they come in and investigate or do the do the surveys of the facility and so on. There is a lot. And duties of the nursing home administrator are included there. This is something that was in the final report as they were completing some of this that really moved me. It would be difficult to find a more vulnerable, more easily exploitable class of consumers. The average patient is 82, is female and a widow, has 2 or more chronic diseases, and resides in the home an average of 2.4 years. Some 85% of persons who enter nursing homes die there. 50% either have no living relatives or have no direct relationship with even a distant relative, too sick oftentimes to even be aware of their circumstances. They are at the mercy of their keepers. You know, it's hard to picture ourselves in that situation. The one piece of data that just knocked me off my feet was that 60% of nursing home residents have no visitors. 60% have no visitors. Comments on that?
First of all, it breaks my heart
Yeah.
that people would not have visitors. Second of all, it means that there are not eyes to see what's going on and in some of the lesser facilities, and so there's no one there. The squeaky wheel gets oiled, I hate to say, based on my experience with family members.
Mhm.
And so there's no one there to know what's the norm, and no one there to report what's not being done or to follow up and make sure it is. And that's an accident waiting to happen, so to speak.
Yes.
Well, I would agree, and especially, this is Kay, if the person is not totally aware or too sick to get involved and speak their needs. I mean, part of the reason that they're in a facility that way is that they can't care for themselves, and so someone, the state or the family, is paying for their care, and it's not happening. And I also find it very frustrating that there seems to be a difference, a pretty major difference, in homes that are deemed Medicaid versus private pay. And, you know, money talks, which is very sad for the elderly.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely some factors that draw lines between different nursing homes. It is not one size fits all at all, and it's not equal quality across the board. So, you know, you were talking, Jamie, I think you were the one that was mentioning advocacy and not having anyone there to advocate for you. And wow, so we really have a big job because we're standing in some ways, we are standing in for those 60% of residents that need an advocate. And so, yeah, it's a big job.
You know, this is, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
So even to that, a lot of people don't realize that they can advocate and they can ask. So either afraid that there will be repercussions, or they just don't understand that they can question the status quo, that it's not okay to have somebody treating you disrespectfully or yelling at you or telling you how old and incompetent you are, or whatever. Because I've seen it happen, but like I said, a lot of people, even us, going to our own doctors, you know, they're not God, and we should be questioning them, and just the general population doesn't know that that's okay. We should.
You know, I agree, but I'm not sure that there isn't ramification when somebody starts to complain. The other thought, it just crossed my head. It's like, I wonder if we as ombudsmen found out who the people were that never had visitors and concentrated our efforts on them, hoping that the family would be the advocate for the ones who do have visitors. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that it would be probably inappropriate to set aside the people that did have family visitors, but that doesn't mean that those that don't get visitors and don't have their own family advocates don't require a little extra checking up from us. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
And I don't think it's out. I mean, I do random, I just go by, I keep track of which people who I've seen over as long as I've been at Indian Springs and the Barrington. But, keeping that random because I don't know who has visitors or not. But there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with even if you have a relationship with staff to say, hey, who's been here to visit so and so lately? Just just to kind of get a feel for the people who don't. Again, it means then a relationship with staff, but then just to find out so that you can have a couple of people that are targeted each visit that aren't going to have someone visit them. Because I know when I go, a lot of times I have to be careful or decide how much time I have and what my mission is that day when I'm visiting, because sometimes I'm there just to be a person to listen to people because they just want a visitor and they want someone to talk to.
Right. And sometimes some important information comes out of those casual conversations, would you say?
Definitely. And, it's picking up on little things that even that aren't meant to point out facts. But yes, those little conversations, or I also make it a point if there's a family member. I mean, I have to I try to read what's going on, but I do try to at least pop my head in a room if I see a family member, just so they know who I am, so they can say, hey, Mom, don't forget, you can call the ombudsman office. You can call Jamie. She can, she'll be here. She'll help you out. Or that they know they can call and say, there's some things that I think might be amiss. And that's where you learn also how to tailor some of your visits. If something's not, if I'm not happy with something going on with my mom and I tell the ombudsman, then that's a good way to go around that and ask questions about the same kind of topic.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, thank you. That it's helpful to the conversation. So federal requirements on the Nursing Home Reform Law of 1987, and then CMS regulations. I'm not sure how familiar you are with CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It's part of the Department of Health and Human Services. And when you're looking for information and you've exhausted ProSenior's excellent resource collection, then it's a great place to look. You can trust the information that is on CMS websites. So also, Biden talked last October about providing more oversight for the poorest performing nursing homes in the country with that special focus facilities. Has increased penalties and safety standards and technical assistance and resources. And the hope, of course, is that the facilities, the providers will take advantage of those options and we'll find ourselves looking at better quality in our long-term care. When I send this to you, send the PowerPoint, it'll be in a form of a PDF, and I've included a few links that you might want to go to take a look at where I did some of my research. So federal regulatory requirements, Residents have the right to organize and participate in resident groups within the facility. Resident groups can be all kinds of things. It can be a crochet club. It can be a movie club. It can be a resident council. It can be a walking organization. It can be a variety of things, but certainly resident council fits in that niche. And resident right to participate in family groups, and right to a family council, which gives families or resident representatives the right to meet with other resident families or representatives. And state regulatory requirements, resident rights, we always go back to resident rights. And resident life enrichment, encourage participation in social, recreational, and leisure activities, and make life more meaningful and maintain those social, physical, and emotional well-being and improve, right? Aren't we called to, our facilities are called to maintain and improve. I'm not sure that happens very often, but it is the charge. Any comments there? Well,
my facility, I'm sorry, this is Nancy. My facility, the activity director claims there's no budget for activities. Even though if you ask the administrators, they say, oh, of course there is. The money is not available to her to have anything other than bingo and a few watching TV, discussing current events. There's no entertainers that come in. There's no groups. It's very sad.
And entertainers coming in or groups like choral groups or whatever, usually there's no cost. But yeah, I don't know what to say to that, Nancy, except that that administrator needs to release those funds to the activities director or make those purchases. So, right?
Yes.
So what can we do? We talk about the problem, but what can we do? Per the Older Americans Act, the role is to promote, provide technical support for the development of councils, both kinds of councils, and provide ongoing support as requested by resident and family councils to protect the well-being and rights of residents. So should we put, so if we have a facility that we're assigned to, and we know that our resident councils meet the second Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. in the dining room, should we put it on our calendar to be there each month?
I don't know about each month, but definitely talk to the president of the resident council and probably come in at least quarterly to help them organize their complaints and make sure they're being followed up on.
This is Jamie. I was under the understanding that we have to be invited to come to a resident council meeting.
You're right. You're right. The only people that are automatically welcome in most structures in a resident council meeting are residents. So we need to get an invitation. A staff member also needs to get an invitation prior to attending any resident council meetings. That was kind of a trick question, Jamie. You nailed it. Sorry, it's maybe my old educator coming out. But so it is our job to help developer support, but we cannot be present in meetings without an invitation. Do you think it would be hard to get an invitation? I can tell you that in my history in facilities. If I asked the resident council president, or really any member, you can get permission from any member. They jumped on it, and it was very, very easy to be invited. Would it be okay for me to attend your next resident council meeting and see how you operate? Maybe I would have some suggestions for you. And the answer has always been, of course, we'd love to have you, of course. So I don't think you'll see that to be a difficult thing.
I have a question. What if there is no set of officers among the residents?
And there are not always officers. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit here soon is the fact that there are lots of different structures that you can use to create a resident council. And it depends on the size of the facility. It depends on the residents and their preferences, and who you have, what skills people have as far as developing and maintaining. And then that is part of your role, is to help develop and then to be the support person when questions come up or problems occur. So, yeah. So how about your assigned facility? And I know that a couple of you on this call have 2 facilities, but think about one of them, choose one of them to really think about. And there are some questions here, 6 questions. And I'm not expecting you to all have all of these answers right now, but I'm thinking that these are questions that might be helpful for you to take into your next visit. Is there anyone here who already knows the answers to all 6 of these for your facility?
I do. I have 2 facilities. I can do the positive one.
Good job.
Barrington has a resident council, and this has to do with it comes from the top, I believe. It comes from management. It also comes from having a president who is very responsible and takes this whole thing seriously. He actually calls it their town hall meeting. He won't even call it resident council. He takes minutes. Every time I see him, he hands me the minutes of the meetings. So they meet once a month. He basically runs it, but he asks for questions. They have a secretary. They actually even have sort of a little treasurer, because sometimes they do collections for something. So I do know his name. I have his phone number. We text periodically. They have generally sometimes 15 to 25 people sometimes. And now it's a more functioning, most of the residents are more functioning than, say, Indian Springs, the other place that I have. And they feel that they're effective. And I think, again, that's partly because Jim, the president, makes sure that their director knows exactly what's going on and he doesn't let things drop. So that is important. It's key.
Leadership is always important, isn't it?
It is. And I know you said one, but I'm going to say real quick, my other one, there are people who are cognitively just fine, who have run resident council, and then they've progressed, and they've actually been able to move out of Indian Springs. More power to them. But it's usually run by a staff member, and they sometimes it's not, they have on their calendar a set schedule, but it never is run when they say it's going to. It's just kind of when it works or when there's nothing else to do. And so, there again, it's because it's run by the gal who runs it is great, but it's run by a very poorly managed conglomerate of nursing homes personally. So, enough for me.
Yeah. Well, if it's done kind of whenever and not on a regular schedule, I would think attendance would be poor. Is it?
Sorry.
Is attendance
Muting myself. Yeah, so it is. Well, you know what it is it's whoever. I mean, she's tries to get people to come into that activities room, but it just a lot of times it's just they wheel people in who really honestly are very confused, And because I've been there as they've been ending or as they're starting, and she has not invited me. The other resident council presidents have, but then they've either left or they never knew exactly when they were going to have it, because for some reason the staff member always has to be there, which I don't believe, but they let it happen.
Oh, okay. So,
I was going to say, my facility, I could answer all those questions, but it isn't effective, and the meetings are not necessarily well attended because it's not effective. But they meet regularly. The activities director has to be there to take notes because they've tried getting someone else to take notes and that doesn't work. They tried a recording, but no one could transcribe it. And so they run it themselves, but the activity director just makes bullet points, not really good notes.
okay. Well, I think that probably a lot of those issues that you're mentioning are common in resident councils in different facilities. So the ombudsman to-do list, meet with the president, of course, ask for an invitation to a future meeting, and then start slowly. Observe how the group works before offering to help, and promote the council to the provider, the facility, the administrator, and also to residents as a problem-solving tool. That's what it really is supposed to be, as a problem-solving tool. Although there is a whole other piece of the resident council where it can be more social. So resident council can be used to spearhead special events, for example. And also, if there are issues that are bothering people, they can ask for, and they could maybe ask you for an educational program. So talk about resident rights, talk about a new law, talk about the oh my gosh, I'm not thinking of the name of the new camera law. But anyway, you know, those kinds of things are a good use of their time as well. And remember, resident council is for residents. And we want to be careful to always be riding in the back seat, not driving the car. So let's talk for just a little bit about family councils. Family councils can be run very similarly, but they have their own set of challenges. So family members might have tunnel vision. They can only see the needs and desires of their own loved one. But the ombudsman might be able to help family members come together to see connections between their concerns and the concerns of others. So if you as the ombudsman can help to build some empathy between the family members, that serves everyone well. An ombudsman may be able to explain why a problem exists and how widespread it is. And you know of another facility where something like that was happening, and this is what they did, and this was the outcome, good or bad. We learn from from negative outcomes as well as positive. So, the resident and family council toolkit, it's good. Looks like this. Oh, I think you'll see it coming up here in a minute. And there's the website where you can find it. I drew some of the information this afternoon or this morning from this. So resident council structures, we were talking about some different structures, like what if there are no officers? That's called an informal structure. They probably don't have bylaws either, They probably don't use committees. It can be led by a staff member who believes residents should express concerns and wishes, but that's not a first choice. That's down the line. If absolutely there is no resident who has the desire and skills and can do it with some support, that the bylaws, officers, and committees, that usually is a more effective model. And also, it's encouraged to use Robert's Rules of Order, kind of. I can't see it being, I mean, I've been in groups where parliamentary procedure was, you got your knuckles cracked if you made an error, and we're not looking for that. But here are some different structures. Somebody said that one of the administrators was calling resident council town meeting. Who was that? Or am I remembering it incorrectly?
No, that was me. Sorry, I had to get myself unmuted.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, that he does it he calls it a town meeting and types up minutes, everything.
Okay, and the minutes are important. In fact, Linda was reminding me that when the surveyors come around, that's one of the things that they want to see, is they want to see that there are resident council minutes. We should be able to see them as well when we visit. So I'm not going to read those to you, but just looking at those, some of those structures are really a representative model. So if I'm not some kind of an officer or whatever, I would not necessarily be invited to those meetings. They function more like a representative committee. So effective resident councils, what do they have in common? Well, they're talked up in a very positive, enthusiastic way. So, oh, you're troubled with this? I wonder if resident council would be interested in talking with you about that. They're reminding the residents that it exists when it does exist. And you can work with the resident council president to make sure that there are postings around the facility with dates and times and so on and so on. So, and contact information for him or her. When ideas and concerns are expressed to administration, if it can be done in a positive manner, you might get further. The resident council might get further. And it definitely requires the administrative staff to listen and act on ideas and suggestions and concerns. If it's just swept under the rug, people will lose interest very quickly. And finally, and this is something that I think about a lot, is new residents. So with resident council, as well as many, many other things in the facility, new residents need to be made aware and invited to attend. As a matter of fact, I would love to see a buddy, every new resident have a buddy, and the buddy take them to their first resident council meeting, but we're not caregivers, so we don't get to do all that. Comments?
I think some of that's Jamie again.
Yes.
I know that some facilities do have buddy or mentor or a welcoming committee, or a couple of people who invite you to have a couple of different people who invite you to eat with them the first few times, especially if you're a single person as opposed to being with a couple, and just to introduce you around, get you to know a few people. And I think it's wonderful if we can suggest that to resident council. I don't know that happens on a regular basis, but it is nice to know kind of the lay of the land and how things work.
Definitely.
But I don't see it happen very often, frankly.
Yeah, yeah. I picture a person coming into the facility and here's your room, and maybe it's sort of kind of ready for you, and maybe it's not ready for you. And I don't know my way around, and I don't know anybody, and I don't know where the dining room is. I don't know the rules. I don't know. And so that, I don't know, that feels like a good effort to me to do whatever to support those new people. So effective council meetings, we've talked about this. It should have a planned agenda or program. The meetings should be orderly. I have talked to some of our ombudsmen who have gone into resident council meetings, and they get pretty wild. So they should be orderly, and Robert's Rules of Order, I don't know if that's necessary or not, but that is the purpose for that. Staff persons and ombudsmen may attend only if invited. And I mean, they can probably give you a standing invitation. I don't know. Leadership is usually a resident, but a staff person may occasionally lead meetings. Oops, sorry. Facilities have to have a grievance committee. That grievance committee, Linda's going to correct me.
I do want to chime in just
yes,
before
please.
you switch subjects to grievance committee. Another reason the minutes are so important. The minutes need to be written, and this takes practice, but what is the issue? Who's responsible? And by when should there be a response? And if the minutes can reflect those three things for every issue that comes up, it is a lot more effective, because the minutes do go to the administrator, and they do go into a book that the administrator has to show to the Ohio Department of Health. And so if it's written that way, okay, we don't have any activities on the weekend. The activities director is responsible for that. We would like a revised activities calendar by the beginning of next month. Getting those, teaching the president or the resident council in general how to do that, how to have effective minutes that hold people accountable the best we can. Just that skill alone helps to make for more effective councils.
Thank you. So, and are you talking about the grievance committee or the resident council, or both?
No, I'm talking about the resident council. I wanted
Okay.
to get that in before you switch topics to the
Oh,
grievance.
gotcha. Okay, thank you. So the grievance committee can be the same team as the resident council, but it's just good records need to be kept. And
so Dixie, it's actually different than the resident council. Grievance committee is headed by the administrator, and the administrator has to have a resident on the committee, but there's also staff persons, and they may invite family, but the grievance committee is headed up by the administrator.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting that. I'm making a note. So just some citations here, some of the rules of the revised code. I'm not going to read those to you, but this is the cover of that toolkit. It is a very good document, I think. I think it has a lot of good information. And if you kind of blow that up a little bit, you can see the website where you can find it. www.ombudsman.ohio.gov. If you are not able to locate that or whatever, just give me an email and I will I'll put that in a file and send it to you. So you'll be able to have that. Any questions about resident or family councils?
Dixie, this is Mary. I have a question. Is response the same as a resolution?
Is the response the same as a solution?
As a resolution. So if
Resolution. Okay.
Yeah.
I would hope that the two would work together. Sometimes though, the response is not going to answer the problem. There's no promise that when the problem is given to the administration, that the administration is going to do what the residents want him or her to. But yes, the response and the resolution, yes, those two can be the same thing.
Okay.
The response can be positive or negative. I mean, it can solve it or not solve it. The resolution, we would expect to solve it. Does that help?
Yes, it
So
does.
we have 8 minutes left.
Wait, I have a quick question too.
Yes, please.
How are family members informed about family councils?
So the administration can send out something, their postings, and they're on the administration can send out something inviting people to help form a family council. Linda, do you have a better comment than that?
Yeah, so while resident councils are required for nursing homes, family councils are not required. And so that's the reason there's not a lot of family councils, right? It usually takes a family member who sort of wants to champion it. And so if a family member wants to champion it, yes, the administrator, the provider needs to support the family by providing a space and time to meet, providing communication about when the meetings are, things like that. And the difficulty with family council is you might get one started. Keeping them going seems to be the challenge. We've had that challenge, as you might imagine. If someone's loved one passes on, then the family tends not to stay involved, and so now you need a new family member to step forward and lead the charge. So family councils can be very effective. We've been able to get them started. We've had a bigger challenge keeping them going.
I think that family councils getting started, and there is a lot of good information in here about family councils too, and I didn't focus on them much in this presentation, but I think family councils have a benefit because they likely have folks that have access to, well, I don't know, copy machines and computers and so on, but a disadvantage because they are not in the facility. I mean, they come and go, but they're not in the facility as residents are. I don't know if that made sense. So, okay, so we have 5 minutes left.
Oh, wait, sorry. I can tell you that when I had a loved one in a facility that had lots of issues, I ended up chatting with family members all the time because family members were lurking in the halls and so upset. And if I'd have known about it, we would organize something. But that happens when family members are really frustrated. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you. I want to give you just a few minutes here at the end to ask any questions that have been burning in your mind and so on. And I want to tell you that actually Blair and Kay, who are both on this call, are working to put together opportunities for you and us to talk regularly, get questions answered, have a better support for one another. Blair or Kay, would you like to talk at all about that?
Kay does.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, we just, Blair and I share the same facility at Twin Towers. And, you know, I guess it really kind of spurred out of some mutual questions we had about our responsibilities and some of the changing rules, et cetera, that were going on, you know, from the state down to us. So we met with Linda and Dixie, and we came up with this idea that if we had, not to burden anybody with more meetings, but maybe once a month or once a quarter had a Zoom call with volunteers, ombudsmen who were interested to really just, you know, air our concerns, be support to one another, because some of the visits are not easy, and to have a place to just kind of, you know, download some of that or look for suggestions or whatever. It could also be a form of communication for pro seniors to be able to communicate to us changes that are on the horizon, whatever, so that we would be kept more updated. Do you have anything else, Blair?
No, you said exactly what I was going to say. So no, that's
Thank
just
you.
a start, but it can be whatever anybody wants it to be. I mean, one of the comments that we got, which we're determined to follow, is that we don't want to have meetings just to have meetings, that we want to have a good, valid agenda, and not a gripe session.
Mhm.
This is Nancy. I would enjoy having that kind of meeting and talking with fellow ombudsmen. So I just vote yes, or however you want to say it.
Mhm. Thank you, Nancy.
Yay. And we
Yeah.
actually have a proposed time to start, right, Dixie?
I don't have it with me right here. Do you?
Yes, I do. Let me pull up my calendar. April 25th. We were talking April 25th, like from 2 to 3.
Okay.
No. 2 to 3
Okay.
is the end service. We're going to have it later. Remember?
Okay. I don't.
6:30, I think, so that people who work can join.
On that same day?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Because
It's okay.
yeah.
Watch your emails, folks, and we will be sure to get that information out to you.
You wrote down 6 to 7.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Right. Yeah.
Thanks for all the information, Dixie. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
good.
Thanks for being
It's
with
really
me.
good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.